Okay, Flickr Browser Part 3, the material design and other cool stuff, Video 7. Let's continue. Okay, so let's fix up our adapter. So again, just to confirm what the problem is in main activity. So we've got our adapter, and on create, the problem is the Flickr Recycler View Adapter isn't initialized here. It's not initialized until we get into our async task when we go to actually download the Flickr JSON data, then we start processing it. So it's really not a good design setting up the Recycler View Adapter here, because this is going to be invoked numerous times every time we do a search query. What we really want to do is set up this initialization in the onCreate method, likewise for the adapter, to configure all of that. And then in this section here, the only thing we want to do is we just want to tell the adapter, here's the new data to display. So to get around that and to do that, we need to go to our Flickr Recycler View Adapter. And there we need to add a new method. Simple method, we're going to call it load new data, public void load new data, depending on how you pronounce it. And we're going to accept as a parameter a list of photo objects. We're going to call it new photos. And the only thing we need to do is put mPhotosList, which is our internal representation that stores our photos, equals the new photos that were passed. Then we need to call a function called notify dataset changed. And what that tells the adapter to do is basically reprocess the entire file and redraw it on the screen. So it'll know that, okay, the data behind the view has changed, so I need to sort of resynchronize myself. So at that point, it will automatically sort of redisplay it on the screen, and it sort of knows that the data's changed. So that's step one, is we've added that method, but we now need to go back to main activity, and we need to change the way we initialize the data in onCreate. So what we really want to do is in the onCreate method, we want to make sure that we've initialized it at this point. So to do that, we're just going to put Flickr Recycler View Adapter equals new Flickr Recycler View Adapter main activity.this, comma, new array list photos. Photo. Okay, so essentially we're initializing it with an empty set of data, which is perfectly acceptable. I mean, we want to attach our adapter as well. So mRecyclerView dot set adapter, and we need to change the order where this is recorded, where this is executed. It needs to be below the other RecyclerView. RecyclerView adapter. So what we should really do to be consistent is to put that there like so. Alright, so we've created the Flickr Recycler View Adapter here now. We've created it once, and we start off with no data, which is probably more functionally correct anyway, because we shouldn't be putting data we don't know what the user has specified. And then we're setting the adapter. So that means now the code that's in post execute is now redundant. So we need to change that a little bit, remove that. We need to call and execute our load new data. So Flickr Recycler Adapter dot load new data, and of course it's going to be using our get m photos. Now just on that get m photos, I had a user leave a discussion message in the course with a very cool tip that I'd forgotten about. Well, actually I didn't know this particular one. So I'm going to take the opportunity now of showing you how to fix this. And you'll notice with the getter, we've got that extra character, that extra letter in there, get m photos. To fix this, we'll go into preferences, and you'll understand why we're doing this shortly. And go into code style, Java. So code style Java, and if it doesn't all show on the screen, clicking over till you get to code generation. Now we need to add a prefix. So for fields, I've mentioned before in previous videos, I use m as a basic way to identify a sort of a variable that belongs to a class, and S is another common one that we use for a static field, even though we haven't done that much, if at all, in this course yet. So put both of those indicators in there, an M and an S. Click OK. Now if we go back to our class, the class that actually invokes this, so I'll go into that code. Remember that the getter is using get m photos, so it's actually automatically looked at the name of the name of the variable, in this case m photos, and it's created a method called get m photos. But now that we've added that prefix, what we can do is delete that, do a command N again, getter. I'm going to do a getter for the m photos, and you can see very smartly now what it does. It knows, okay, it knows that you're using a prefix for m, so it admits that to make this much more readable. So it's now called get photos, which makes a lot more sense than get m photos. So I suggest you do make that changed in the code generation section in preferences. Makes it a lot easier and a lot more readable, which is of course the main thing. So what that means, of course, is that get m photos doesn't exist anymore, so we need to change any references of that to just to get photos now. Like so. So the next question to ask is, now that we've done this, do we need to execute the code in here in the onCreate? If you recall from the previous video, I talked about the life cycle. We don't need to execute the code in here because we're going to be putting the code in the onResume section. So we can delete that out of here altogether and not execute that code, knowing that no matter if we're creating the activity for the first time or if we're resuming, the code down here in onResume is going to be invoked. So we're going to do just in the one place do our query. So the other thing we're going to do now is we don't need to test this for null anymore because we've made that fix. We've guaranteed that onCreate is called and is initializing the Flickr recycler view adapter. So we know that that can never be null because, again, onResume is never called before onCreate. So therefore we can get rid of this now, get rid of this null check, like so. It'll just quickly reformat it, Control-Alt-L. And so we know that, okay, no matter what, that's going to be called, and we're good to go. So that code should now work irrespective, and it's far more efficient now because we're not going to be invoking it multiple times. We were doing that when we were calling this method before, calling the activity before. We were calling it once in onCreate and once in onResume. And of course, we've also fixed it up now so that the adapter is only initialized once, which is of course far more efficient. Okay, so we can just run that to make sure it still works. Okay, we'll run it on our Android Lollipop device. Okay, now you notice what's happened there also this time. Are you wondering, well, how come the red trucks come up? Well, that's because we're now saving the query in the in our preferences, and that does survive starting and stopping apps. So that preference data is, even if you close down the app and start it up again, it's still been saved. It's sort of almost like it's a sort of simple database that's actually recorded automatically by the system. It's not good for lots of complex data, but for basic initialization, or in this case, just a single string, it's perfect. So you notice that when we closed down our app and started it again, it still remembered our last query, which of course was for the red truck. So again, just to be consistent, we can type in something else. We've now got our Android Lollipop functionality working. Okay, so at this point, we've got the basic functionality working. It looks much nicer than it did previously. And we've got our Flickr queries working quite nicely with our search icon. So the next thing to do is we want to add like a detail screen. So ideally what we want to do is we want to be able to click on one of these things, like a photo or one of these rows of information, then open up another screen that automatically displays more data. Perhaps it shows a photo in a large size, because of course these are only thumbnail versions, and maybe some more details on the other strings. Like for example, the author, we recorded that in our photos object. Author was one, and then also tags is another one, and the extended information. So let's do that in the next video. Let's start that process of creating that sort of photo detail screen, for want of a better term. I'll see you in the next video.